everyone, welcome to my channel, HFY Beyond Terra. This channel is all about HFY and sci-fi stories. Now, let's start the story.
The rain on Garnet Array Station wasn't weather. It was the byproduct of a tired life support stack. Warm air pushed through cooling baffles until it surrendered its moisture, and that moisture gathered in the ceiling gutters and fell in thin curtains along the service. Corridors, reclaimed water, cycled through scrubbers and lungs and hydroponic trays, returning to the metal deck plates like the station itself was sweating. Dr. Keir Holden had stopped philosophizing about it years ago. Tonight, it was simply wet enough to ruin medical stock if he didn't move. He hauled the last supply crate across the threshold of his clinic, boots squeaking on the slick mat, and kicked the door's seal plate into place with his heel. The crate label read synth bandage, sterile, keep DRY in big block letters, which always felt like a personal insult on Garnet Array. Keir reached for the lock. Something struck the door from the outside, not wind. Wind didn't make a sound, like a suppressed groan. His fingers paused on the mechanism. In the half-second after, his mind ran through the catalogue he'd built the way some people built prayers. Drunk dockhand, panicked tourist, a prank because even at the edge of mapped space, people still believed humor meant making other people's lives worse. Then the sound came again. Someone trying hard not to be heard and failing because pain didn't care about dignity. Keir slid the lock open and pulled. She fell forward. Not a theatrical collapse, an exhausted, stubborn body refusing to give in until gravity stole the argument. She caught the doorframe with one hand, the other pressed hard against her ribs. Blood threaded between her fingers, dark against fabric that used to look expensive. She lifted her head as if the simple act of needing help had personally offended her. "What are you doing?" she rasped, teeth clenched, admiring the decor. Keir blinked once. Then his hands were on her shoulders, steady but not rough. The familiar calm dropping into place like a mask he'd worn for most of his adult life. "I'm deciding if you can walk," he said. "Exam room 6 meters. If you make it, we skip the dramatic floor stain." Her eyes narrowed. Fury, yes, but something else flickered beneath it. Like surprise that he'd met pain with sarcasm instead of awe. "I can walk." She could. Barely. He kept a hand at her elbow as they moved down the short corridor, feeling tremors that spoke of shock beginning to nibble at the edges of her control. She favored her left leg. Her breathing was too shallow, guarding a wound. The gash above. Her eyebrow kept opening, hair plastered across it by the station's artificial drizzle. And then he saw her ears, long, tapered, swept back in a clean arc from her temples, elegant in a way no human mutation produced without deliberate design. Keir's throat tightened for the briefest moment. Not fear, recognition that this wasn't a dock brawl. Her gaze sharpened on him. Don't what? Whatever you were about to do with your face." Keir realized he'd paused. He unpaused. "Sit," he said, guiding her onto the treatment table. "Try not to pass out until I tell you whether you're allowed." She huffed a laugh that hurt her immediately. The sound turned into a hiss. Keir cut away fabric with shears, brisk and impersonal. His clinic didn't have room for gentleness that wasted time. There were lacerations, 3 of them, deep enough to make his stomach clench. One ran dangerously close to where a major vessel should have been. Bruising suggested impact with a hard surface. Burns on her palm's plasma exposure, recent. You've got terrible luck, Keir muttered. Snapping on sterile gloves, or someone's actively invested in you having a bad night. Both, she said. He grabbed the handheld scanner and swept it over her torso. Readouts flickered across his display. The injury map made him swear silently. Pain tolerance? High. That's not an answer. She angled her chin up. Enough. All right. Enough it is. He prepped the field, antiseptic and sealant. And she watched every motion the way predators watched movement, not because they were afraid, but because they were calculating. You're not asking questions, she said. Keir didn't look up. Would you answer them? A beat of silence. No. Then I'm saving us both time. He pressed antiseptic to the first wound. This will sting. She sucked in a sharp breath, fingers tightening on the edge of the table. But she didn't jerk away. Keir worked fast, clean. Close stimulate tissue growth with the portable regenerator. Then suture with dissolving thread that could keep up with fast-healing physiology. Because her cells were already knitting at a rate that made the scan's baseline alarms blink. He frowned. You're Valeri. She didn't bother denying it. You've heard of us. I read about you, he said. In the medical compendium, it said Valeri mostly stay in their own space, and they heal too quickly to be trusted with their own common sense. That earned her a painful exhale that might have been laughter. It didn't say that. It implied it. He moved too. The second laceration deeper, nastier, and close enough to a vessel that he felt his pulse in his ears. You're lucky, Keir said, voice flattening. 3 millimeters the other way, and you'd be dead. Her gaze drifted to the ceiling. Luck doesn't follow me. No, he agreed. It doesn't. For a while he let her have silence. Some patients needed chatter, others needed control, and conversation stole that from them. She belonged to the second category. When he was nearly done closing the second wound, she spoke again, quiet but sharp. Do you understand, human, that I'm not? She stopped, as if searching for the word that fit. Ordinary. Keir tied off a stitch and looked up. Her eyes were amber shot through with darker threads, like sunlight caught behind storm glass. There was weight there. Warning. Test. Curiosity about whether he'd flinch. Keir went back to his work. I understand you're bleeding on my table, he said. That makes you my patient. Everything else can take a number. The silence after that changed texture. Not softer, different. As if she'd expected a ritual and gotten a receipt instead. He finished suturing and reached for bandages. Name, he said. Because paperwork was another kind of battlefield. She hesitated a fraction too long. Sarah Venn. Keir's hands didn't pause, but his brain did. That name wasn't a random dockhand name. It had the ring of headlines, of official briefings, of strategic leadership and valor citations, and people speaking it carefully. Keir didn't reward it with anything. Keir Holden, he said, wrapping the bandage snug, not cruel. Don't move. Her mouth twitched. Just like that. just like that. He cleaned the cut on her brow. Superficial. He'd seen worse from a careless cabinet corner. You'll barely scar, he said. Your ribs will complain longer. Syrah's gaze stayed on his face as if she expected it to change into something properly reverent. When it didn't, her expression slipped only for a heartbeat into something close to confusion. Most people react differently, she said. To what? Keir asked, sealing the brow wound. To me, Keir shrugged. I'm a medic. If I start getting impressed by injured people, I'm going to miss a bleed. That isn't what I meant. I know. He stepped back and assessed his work. You're not cleared to wander the station. You're going in recovery. Bed, entertainment console. Call button. I'll check you every few hours. Again, just like that. Keir grabbed a drip pack and began calibrating dosage for Valeri metabolism. The station database was slow. Everything on Garnet Array was slow except emergencies, which always arrived early. Well, he said, there is one difference. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. My coffee is terrible, Keir said, hanging the drip. My food tastes like recycled despair, and my bedside manner has been described as aggressively functional. If you came here expecting luxury, you took a wrong turn somewhere near common sense. This time, her laugh escaped for real. It surprised both of them. You're strange, she said. And there was no insult in it now, only observation. I've been called worse, Keir replied, helping her sit up. Come on, let's get you off the table. Bleeding in my hallway is a privilege I charge extra for. He walked her to recovery, letting her lean without commenting on it. Dignity mattered. He tucked an old thermal blanket over her like it still had pride in itself. Sleep, he said. Your body does its best work when you stop arguing with it. She caught his wrist as he turned. Not hard, just enough to stop him. Keir. He looked back. Syrah studied him the way she'd studied. His hands, but softer now, less assessment, more trying to understand. People usually react differently to my name, she said. To what I am, would you prefer I did? Keir asked, honestly curious. I can fake awe. I'm not great at it, but I can attempt a dramatic feint. One corner of her mouth rose. No. Then we're good. He nodded toward the drip. Try not to tear my sutures. She released his wrist. Thank you, she said, so quiet it barely made it to him. Keir's reply came out the only way he knew how. Legendary people bleed like everyone else. He said, their wounds close the same way when treated properly. The rest is noise. He left her to sleep and returned to scrub blood from his entry floor. Because frontier medicine was 90% cleaning and 10% praying your supplies lasted. Outside, the station's false rain kept falling endless, recycled, patient, 3 days later, Keir learned a new definition of time. Stop moving, he said, holding the regeneration scanner up like it was a judgment. You tore to stitches. Syrah sat on the exam table, arms crossed, looking offensively unrepentant. Her posture had regained the rigid control of a soldier even as her bandages suggested. She'd recently tried to outrun her own healing. The exercise were necessary, she said, I must maintain readiness. You must maintain having organs inside you. Keir shot back. Readiness is less useful if you leak. It has been for days, she protested, as if he'd sentenced her to. A decade. 3, he corrected. And yes, I know Valeri heal fast. That doesn't mean you get to treat physics like a rumor. My enemies won't wait. They're not in my clinic, Keir said, peeling back bandages. And if they show up, I'll point at my medical sanctuary sign. It blinks, very intimidating. She gave him a look that suggested she was seriously revisiting the kill. You were the spoon option. Keir checked the wound margins. Cleaner than he'd feared. Her accelerated healing was working overtime despite her best efforts to sabotage it. You're staying, he said, resealing the bandage, because you're weak, or because you don't want to leave. Sarah's eyes flicked away. Her hand drifted to the bandage, an absent touch, repeated whenever their conversations got too close. Both, she admitted. Keir didn't press immediately. He cleaned tools, disposed of dressings, let the silence build its own shape. Finally, she spoke. My life has been motion for years. Orders, fleets, negotiations, warfare, running. Her voice tightened on the last word. 6 weeks of it. Keir leaned against the counter. And now you've found the glamorous thrill of lying still while someone lectures you about wound. Keir, I counted, she said. Keir blinked. Counted what? How many times you've told me to rest? She looked smug about it. 17. Only 17. He put a hand to his chest. I'm losing my edge. Despite herself, she smiled. Keir made coffee while she watched, the machine gurgling like it resented consciousness. He poured to cups that smelled vaguely like burnt regret and handed her one. Sarah stared at it. How do you make it that bad? Discipline, Keir said. Years of practice. Also, the water here has been recycled since before I was born. So everything tastes like memory and poor choices. That isn't what memory tastes like. How would you know? Keir sipped his cup and did not grimace, because he was stubborn. Maybe Valeri nostalgia has a pleasant mineral finish. She didn't drink hers. You looked me up, she said, not accusing, but sharp. I run searches on all patients, Keir replied. It's called being alive longer. Her shoulders tensed. He'd found the thread. Your record is impressive, he said, carefully. Defensive campaigns, treaty work, strategic doctrine, and then 6 weeks ago everything goes quiet. He watched her face. There's a bounty. From the Kestrel cartel. Sarah's jaw set. And you're still treating me. Keir shrugged. That's generally how medicine works. The bounty is enough to buy a clinic, she said. Several. Keir set his cup down. I spent 8 years patching soldiers in war zones. I watched people kill for money, for ideology, for boredom. I came out here because I was tired of caring who thought they were righteous. He met her eyes. I'm not interested in your bounty. I'm interested in keeping your ribs attached to the rest of you. Sarah's expression cracked into something raw and tired. People don't treat me like this. Like what? Like I'm ordinary. The word came out like a confession. Keir's voice softened. That sounds exhausting. It is. Her fingers traced the rim of the cup. Every conversation has weight. Every smile is interpreted. Every decision echoes through thousands of lives. Here you argued with me about calisthenics. She looked up. You threatened to sedate me. I meant it. Keir said. Don't tempt me. A startled laugh escaped her, and for a moment, she looked less like a symbol and more like a person who hadn't been allowed to be one in a long time. The station's proximity alarm shrieked at for 12. Keir was halfway out of bed before the sound finished its first cycle. Old reflexes didn't die. They just waited. He checked the security tablet by his door. 3 ships had docked in the lower bays, sleek, armored, broadcasting civilian transponders the way a wolf might wear a sheep's bell. Keir exhaled through his nose. Of course, he didn't need to wake Sarah. She was already dressed, standing at the recovery room porthole, watching the docking feeds with a predator's stillness. Kestrel, she said, before he spoke. Assault configuration. 12. Maybe more. Keir squinted at the grainy view. You can tell that from a blurry screen. The hull plating is wrong for the ID. The heat trace suggests recent weapons use. And I recognize the frame. She turned, calm in a way that meant violence had already begun in her head. They're here for me. Keir rubbed his face. It's too early for murder. I haven't even had my first crime against humanity coffee. Sarah's voice sharpened. Keir, right? He straightened. Humor was a tool, not a shield. How long? 15 minutes, she said. Maybe less. Keir moved. Storage lockers clicked open. Equipment he'd sworn he'd never use in this clinic came out. Portable shield nodes. Emergency barricade foam. A plasma cutter that had not for surgery stamped on the handle in warning red. Sarah watched him work, something like renewed respect in her eyes. You're prepared. I'm prepared for a lot, Keir said, shoving a shield node into her hands. She caught it with reflexes that weren't fair. Frontier medicine attracts trouble. Eventually trouble walks in. With opinions and firearms. She tested the node like she'd used them before. You never mentioned military service. You never asked, Keir said, planting barricade foam at the service access. Also, it didn't seem relevant to your stab wounds. Hold this. He handed her a surgical plasma torch meant for cauterizing, but perfectly happy cutting through bulkhead locks if asked nicely. The alarm chimed again. Closer. Sarah's posture shifted into command. They'll breach the main entrance and send a second team through service, already sealed. Keir said, shield at the front, barricades at service. And I shut down vents because I've seen enough disasters to know people love crawling through ducts. Sarah's eyes narrowed. You have a plan. I have several, Keir said. Most are bad. Bad plans are still plans. He pulled up the clinic schematic. Treatment room has sanctuary lockdown required by station code. If we time it right, I can trap half their team behind a containment field. Sarah's expression sharpened. And the other half. Keir glanced at her bandage line. That's where you come in. He lifted a brow. You're Valeri. You move fast. Also, you're angry. I'm angry, she repeated, almost amused. You've been hunted for 6 weeks, Keir said. You came here to heal and got assassins instead. I would be angry. Anger can be useful if you aim it. Sarah slid blades from her boots because, of course, she had blades in her boots. Aim it where? At them, Keir said, preferably. Not at my medical cabinetry. The door blew inward 30 seconds later. Plasma charges turned reinforced steel into molten slag. Operatives poured through, crisp and coordinated, weapons up. Keir counted 6. He tapped the sanctuary control. Realities snapped. A hard containment field bloomed, slicing the room in half and trapping 6 operatives in a shimmering bubble designed to contain biohazards, apparently including shocked mercenaries. Keir's intercom kicked on automatically. He leaned into it like he was making an announcement at a civic meeting. Attention, you are currently violating medical sanctuary protocols, he said pleasantly. Please cease hostile actions. Continued aggression will result in paperwork. One of the trapped operatives shouted something extremely rude. Keir sighed. That's just unnecessary. Plasma fire erupted from the other 6, shredding waiting room furniture. Keir ducked behind the counter and triggered the clinic's fire suppression grid reprogrammed. In a hurry to vent a dense, non-lethal disorientation mist, the room fogged. Sarah moved through it like she'd been born in smoke silent. Precise, merciless, blades flashed in short arcs. Bodies hit the deck with grunts and the thud of weaponry clattering away. Keir kept one eye on the containment field, the other on the security feed. He called out flanks, angles, threats the way he once called out triage priorities. Left, he shouted once. Sarah pivoted without hesitation, trusting him, and dropped the approaching operative with a clean strike. It ended fast. Too fast for how much mess it made. When the last attacker went down unconscious, breathing, Keir slumped against the control panel and let himself feel the fatigue he'd been refusing. Sarah stood amid the fallen, chest rising and falling steady, blood beading at the edge of her reopened bandage line. Keir pointed at it. You're bleeding again. It's minor, she said, and her tone suggested she'd like him to stop caring. It's another torn suture, Keir replied, which makes 3. Congratulations, you're consistent. Station security arrived 20 minutes later, boots clanging, faces set in the weary irritation of people who always showed up after the interesting part. The lead officer in Dosco, a broad-shouldered woman with tired eyes and a baton she used mostly for emphasis, took one look at Keir's wrecked waiting room and the pile of unconscious mercenaries and just exhaled. When you opened a clinic here, Rin said, I thought it would be quiet. It was quiet for 2 years, Keir protested, already ray-bandaging Sarah with the aggressive gentleness of a man making a point. Rin's gaze flicked to Sarah's pointed ears, then back to Keir. Doc, do you know who you've been hiding? In your recovery room, I've been treating a patient, Keir said. There's a difference. Sarah sat on the exam table, watching the exchange with an expression that hovered between amused and disarmed. Rin rubbed her temple. Kestrel, put out a bounty big enough to buy half this station? Great, Keir said. They can use it to pay for my new door. By morning, Garnet Array's corridors were full of uniforms and suits, Valeri representatives, station administrators, one journalist with too much confidence and not enough respect for biohazard tape Keir dealt with them the only way he knew. How like they were inconveniences interfering with medicine. No, he told the journalist, physically steering him away from recovery. You can't interview her. She's healing, and she's under strict orders not to do anything heroic until her stitches stop trying to escape. Her body, the public deserves to know. The public deserves to wait. Keir snapped. Come back in a week. Or never. Either works. Later, he found Sarah staring at a paused holder message. An older Valeri officer, with silver hair and a voice full of urgency. Sarah didn't look up when Keir entered. They need me. They needed you 6 weeks ago, Keir said, setting down to fresh cups of coffee that were, if possible, worse than usual. They can survive 2 more days. Sarah eyed the cup. This is not coffee. It is absolutely coffee, Keir lied. It's just committed to being terrible. She took it anyway. Keir sat beside her bed. Can I tell you something I learned patching soldiers? Sarah's mouth twitched. You're going to regardless, correct? Keir stared into his cup like it held wisdom instead of burnt bitterness. Duty is real. Responsibility is real. But people use it like a blade against themselves. They forget they're human nor Valeri first. Sarah's gaze dropped to her bandage. You think I've forgotten. I think you've been running until your body forced you to stop, Keir said. And stopping felt like failure. Her breath caught. Not much. Just enough. Keir kept his voice steady. Out there, your commander then. A symbol. A strategic advantage. Everyone treats you like a tool that holds the line. In here, you're Sarah. You're injured. You need care. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you alive. Sarah held his gaze for a long moment. Then, very quietly, no one treats me like this. Keir shrugged, uncomfortable with sincerity, and refusing to show it. My bedside manner is aggressively functional. That drew a soft laugh reel, unguarded. 2 days later, a Valeri vessel docked. Honor guards arrived. Official protocols unfolded in crisp lines and polished phrases. Sarah stood in the docking bay in a formal uniform. That made her look like exactly what the galaxy thought she was. Composed, lethal, untouchable. Before she boarded, she turned back toward Keir's clinic. Even at a distance, Keir saw her touch her side, where his bandages hid beneath the uniform and unconscious gesture now. Familiar. Keir raised his cup in salute, because it was what he had. Sarah smiled. His tablet chimed a moment later. Payment received. Standard medical rates. Plus a note attached. Short and precise. For the terrible coffee, the arguments, and the complete lack of ceremony. Worth every credit. Keir stood alone in the clinic that still smelled faintly of plasma scoring and antiseptic, listening to the station's fake rain patter against the corridor grates. He looked at the stain where blood had dried and been scrubbed away and thought, not for the first time, that the strangest thing about respect was how often it arrived without fanfare. How extraordinary it felt when someone saw a wound before they saw a legend. Then he washed his hands, because that was what medics did, and went to make coffee that could probably dissolve a spoon. Some disasters, he'd learned, were best handled one cup at a time.